Awesome. So I'm really stoked today to have a gentleman here. Actually, I was on his podcast about a year ago, where he was interviewing me about my book, and now I've got and Randy. That's your wife. I've got Adam. I've got Adam here, and we're gonna have a chat. But today, so our guest is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and resilience researcher. So that's pretty cool. He inspires leaders to master the challenges of massive disruption in his recently released book, Change Proof, leveraging the power of uncertainty to build long-term resilience. And so today we welcome Adam Markel to Impact. And as always, if you like what Devin and I are doing, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. It really means a lot to us to get the word out. We're so fortunate to meet so many really amazing people around the planet and to share their stories. So it really means a lot to subscribe and check it out. And this episode is sponsored by my good friend Todd Palmer and his #1 international best-selling book, From Suck to Success: A Guide to Extraordinary Entrepreneurship. And then, unfortunately, Devin, my son, is my co-host here today. He's been working like crazy in the film and entertainment industry since COVID has kind of opened up a bit here. So he actually is sick today. So unfortunately, he can't make it. And he was going to plug my book here as a sponsor. So he says, so this is what Devin would say, my dad's best-selling book sponsors also, which is Take That Leap, Risking It All for What Really Matters, in our lives. And but before we start, welcome so much, Adam, to our show. It's just so awesome to have you on. You're such a great, high energy guy. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Nigel, it's great to be here. I'm sorry I'm not going to get to see your son. I heard, well, I think at some point, given all that we're hearing about the disruptions from the pandemic, that there'll be some kid going into 5th grade, like where his teacher asks about his homework or something. He walks in and says, the supply chain created an issue. I couldn't get my homework done. There's no more the dog ate it.
Yeah, that's right. That's
a different excuse. So
that's true.
I'm surprised Devin didn't just say, "Hey, it's a supply chain, man. I can't make it in today." Or
I'm sure he'll be calling in. He'll be saying that in a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, man. It's a supply chain thing. Yeah. But before we start, this is what Devin and I always start with, something here, what we call 2 truths or a bunch of truths and a lie. So Randy has kindly sent me some things here. And
by the way, for just context,
yes.
Randy is my wife of 32 plus years. So she's getting top billing as
32. That's
ought to be the case. So
that's awesome. I think Reiko and I are 30. What year? We were 1989. What year did you guys get married?
We're 89, man. Yeah.
That's July, like us.
July 89.
What day? July
29, 89.
We were August 12th. Wow. 89.
Too funny. We got
you. But you look way younger than me. Days. So,
Not if I let my beard grow.
I know. It's the David Letterman thing, right? You get that big gray beard and you're like, is he 90 years old? And then he shaves it off and he looks like he's only 80.
It's like no more. It's no more pepper. it's just salt now.
That's right. It's all the salt.
All
the ice. Oh man. Yeah, so I'm gonna read some things here, and I'm gonna get, Dev's not here, so I'm gonna guess which is the lie. Okay.
Oh, I see how you guys do this.
Yeah, this is what we do here. So okay. Okay, #1, I saw my very first bald eagle in the wild in 2021. #2, I worked 8 years as a lifeguard at Jones Beach in New York. Wow, that's cool. Okay, another one about water. So you're a water guy, I see here. I love cold water surfing. So I think you spend half your time on the East Coast and then the West Coast. You split it up. So, and then another one here. I can swim a lap underwater with my face up. How the heck can you do that without getting everything up your nose? I couldn't do that.
There are a lot of water things here, Ed.
I know. Look at this. And then another one is vacuuming relaxes me. Oh gosh. I'm gonna go for
Now, what's a
drum
good score
roll.
here? Because you got 5, right? Is that
I
what
got
those were?
5 in here, and then I know
Uh,
one. I know at least one is a lie. So I'm gonna try and guess,
at
and then and
least
then
one
then
is
you
a
can
lie.
fill me in. Yeah. So I mean this underwater. So a lap underwater, I guess in a pool or wherever you are, but face up. So you're facing up. I mean, I don't know if I don't know. I think you're just gonna swallow too much water in your nose, and yeah, that one. I think that's the
You
lie
think
or
that's
the
a
fit.
lie? Oh,
Yeah, you
buddy.
can do it, right?
I'm part dolphin. This is the deal.
God,
I
you're
even have web
kidding.
web toes to prove it. So at least if I'm not part dolphin now, I was in a prior life.
That's
So,
crazy.
so yeah,
I
that's the
could.
truth.
That's
That's
the
the
truth.
truth. Yeah.
So, okay, next one here. I don't know, vacuuming. Vacuuming relaxes me. I don't know. Do you relax me?
No, man.
I hate
That's the
vacuuming.
lie.
That's the lie. Okay.
I have
Okay.
it's like a trigger for me. My anybody in my family knows there's like I have trauma associated
Yeah.
with the sound of a vacuum cleaner. It's the
my
strangest
back,
thing.
my back hurts. I can't. Yeah, I have back issue. I can't do it.
I
Um,
literally hear that sound and it makes me want to like, I don't know,
yeah,
break
I'm the same.
something.
I gotta tell my wife that
I
too.
want to
Yeah,
break the vacuum is what I
she's
want
over here somewhere.
to do.
So I got an interesting one here. When you interviewed me on your podcast, we'd had a discussion, and I think it was either that day or whatnot. You told me, you said, "Oh my God, today I saw my very first bald eagle in the wild," and
uh,
that was that day. That was that day. So yeah,
yeah, we were up in Maine. My wife and I were
yeah, that's what you said. Yeah, that's
right in the
cool.
middle of the pandemic. We were hunkered in a couple of different places, and
Yeah,
ended up there. And it was, I mean, if you've never seen a bald eagle in the wild, and many people probably haven't,
yeah,
and
true,
maybe I'm
true.
the last on the planet to have had this experience, but man, it was it was epic. I mean, it was
Yeah,
like being, it was like seeing God. It was like
yeah,
for
yeah,
me, I just was so blown away by the majesty of this bird, and
yeah.
it's enormous. Like if you've never seen one actually out there in the wild, it's a big bird.
They're
Like this is
big.
not a pigeon from New York
Yeah,
City, you know.
yeah,
This thing will I thought it could come down and carry us away. So it
yeah.
was beautiful. It was beautiful. I
Very.
actually saw it up in these tall um, blue spruce trees. And then when it took flight, I mean, it was up there for a while, and we were very patient to just be like, what? I'm not
Yeah.
leaving. And in this place where we were, they had all these beautiful, like red fox. I mean, these
Oh.
family of fox. Maybe those are foxes. I don't know what the plural of the fox is. Fox, I guess.
Foxes is yeah.
Foxes is right. And
Yeah.
and it was beautiful.
Foxes.
But when this bird left, took flight, left the wing, and spread its wings, it was just like, wow, man.
Yeah.
It was. I'm still talking about it. So
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
talk about the COVID thing. My wife and I lived at Whistler for a year here. We're lucky we have a place at Whistler. And you know what we saw mostly was bears. Like there were more bears than people for like probably about a year that we were there. Like they were everywhere. We'd see the big bears, the little bears, and then the mamas having the babies and the cubs. And like we saw the whole season
yeah.
from the mating season. We saw the mating season all the way through the delivery in the spring. It was just like it was
Wow.
incredible. Yeah. And
Were
then
those
I mean, yeah,
black
they're
bear or
black bears.
brown?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
got it.
black bears. Yeah. And some of them are brownie because they have a bit of a gene, some issue with the gene. They're like brown, but they're black
Yeah.
bears, but they're brown colored. Yeah. And then we actually we're really fortunate out here in on the West Coast. We actually get a lot of eagles. We have one of the largest concentrations of bald eagles in the world, I believe, up between here and Whistler. It's a place called Squamish. It's on the river. You can come here. It's a tourist attraction. You can watch them. I think it's in November because of salmon. You'll get hundreds and hundreds of them on the river, and they're eating. It's just crazy. But
What's the name of that river, Nigel? I know we're off on a little digression here, but that's
it
okay.
probably it could be the Mamquam River
Yeah.
or yeah, one of those. Mamquam or yeah, yeah. It's amazing. But the place is called Squam, or it's actually called Brackenville. Brackendale. Brackendale is the place
Brackendale. Yeah.
outside of Squamish. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Yeah, I know. I know we're kind of
I I've
getting a little.
spent a fair amount of time for probably the better part of 7 or 8 summers. I spent at least a week, sometimes 2, up in Squamish. And
you're kidding. You're
no,
kidding
man.
me.
And that river that I don't know the name of is a very sacred for me. It's a very sacred river. I've had some pretty wild spiritual moments sitting beside that river and looking up the glaciers, which of course they're glaciers, they never melt, so they're frozen all year long, obviously. And that area, and I've never, so all that time, and now I realize it was in the summer, right?
Yes,
so I didn't see those bald eagles there in the summer. And I've never been there in at any other time of the year.
I think it's November. I think it's somewhere around that. They all come from wherever and they all congregate there, and there's hundreds of them.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. So
wow.
My wife and I, when we were younger, we used to do, the chief, the Snohomish chief.
Sure.
We used to climb.
Granite.
Yeah, we were climbers for 10 years solid. We used to climb. I climbed that.
Not free solo though, buddy. Right?
No, not like Alex Hanold there. Nope, not the crazy. He's a different level. But
that piece of granite is massive.
Massive.
Fact, yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I love, and I actually miss that area. An
gorgeous.
Interesting little tidbit that we probably could have put in. I've been thinking about it. Might have put this in the trivia there. I've jumped off the Whistler Bridge twice.
Wow!
Attached, of course, affixed to a rope.
Yeah, the bungee zone at Whistler. Big call out to the Whistler bungee zone. That's great. I ride my bike across there all the time with my buddy Paul.
Scary, man. I mean, so the bridge that's there, it's super high, and there's this river raging like rapids below. Not like a peaceful little thing, underneath.
The Chickamoose River, I think it is.
Oh my gosh. And then, but the bridge, if I'm not mistaken, is like is all graded so you can see through it
all the way through. Oh yeah.
So you're literally walking on this thing, and anybody that's got height stuff like I do,
me too. Yeah.
Freak you out just to look down, let alone get strapped and thrown and jumping, voluntarily jumping off. So our kids have all done it. Like,
my I think my daughter's the only one that's done it out of our whole family. I'm too chicken.
I'm going to shout out. I'm going to say this. I'm going to call my daughter Eden out on this one. She's the only one. She was too young at the time, so she has an excuse, but she's the only one that did not jump off that bridge.
Right.
Of our 4 kids, she's the only one that didn't get that experience yet.
Yeah, it's stunning. This is like an advert for the Sea to Sky corridor here.
Oh my God.
From Vancouver to Squamish to Whistler.
We could do a whole show on just the beauty of the drive from Vancouver out to Whistler is something that if it's like one of those things you've never done in your life and you want to do something spectacular. It's super expensive. I don't know why it's so expensive out that way, but so
Canadian dollar for the Americans.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
it's cheap. It's cheaper. It should be cheaper, but
well, there's that, but I always thought, even that, everything seems to be elevated, so it somehow manages to offset.
I was on the chairlift last week at Whistler with a gentleman, and he was from Florida. And he'd come up, this is his second or third time this year here. And he said that his favorite drive in the world is exactly what you said, that Sea to Sky Highway. He says, I've been to Norway, I've been to wherever. He says, this is absolutely the most incredible. And I've been driving that road since I was a little kid, or my parents would drive me. And every time I'm in awe as we go up Howe Sound and we look at the islands, and it's yeah.
I mean, are those considered fjords? I mean, it's like these are deep bodies of water.
Yeah, I mean, I consider it like a fjord, but it's not quite like a Norwegian fjord because they're a lot steeper. Our mountains are a little bit more rounded, but it's crazy. But I guess we should talk about the resilience. I mean, there's a little bit of resilience. I mean, you're jumping off bridges and all this kind of crazy. Well,
I mean, look, part of let's tie that together. That'll be fun. For us.
For sure.
Weave that thing. By the way, as you were going through the list of those things, Jones lifeguard for multiple years at Jones Beach. I actually have my old lifeguard whistle that I've been fidgeting with. Like it's just sitting here, and because that's what we used to do as lifeguards, among other, in addition to making the saves out there in the water, we would literally just spin Let me see if I can get this in the right
Spin
spot here.
your whistle.
But yeah, we'd literally just, sit there looking at the water and spin this whistle, twirl this whistle around your finger. And that's probably the first place on the beach when I was 19 years old that I learned about resilience. Because this was my first summer as a non pool guard. Like, you're in the pool, it's a very different kind of lifeguarding than when you're on the ocean. The ocean's constantly changing. The rip currents all along the shore are changing, and the shore line is changing. The sun, the wind, everything, just Mother Nature's on full display. But at this particular beach I worked at, which is a gorgeous stretch of sand, I mean, half a mile and deep and all that, was just filled with people, Nigel. I mean, if you've never seen what that area looks like. So there's a Jersey Shore is packed with people, right? But it's a shore, and it is narrow. So there's, it's a narrow stretch. There's a lot of condensed people, bodies there and blankets and all that kind of stuff, but not that many people. It's stretched thin. But in Long Island, the beaches are wide, they're deep. Right. And so this particular field was where people could come by bus. A lot of other places you have to go by car. So if you're living in the city, a lot of people that grew up in Manhattan or some of the other boroughs didn't have a car. You didn't need a car. You had mass transit. Cars were expensive and usually got ripped off back in the day. So it was like everybody came out on a Saturday or Sunday, and that beach could get up to 100,000 people.
Oh my gosh!
So that's what 100,000 bodies on a hot sandy beach. And now they're all wanting to go in the water, thousands at a time.
Oh, it's like the south of France. It's scary.
We were 20 lifeguards. And the thing about that body of water too, is that these rip currents,
you get the rips. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'd call sucks. That was the actual term we used for them, because they would literally suck you out. And we could tell from the lifeguard stand that there was a suck or a rip current that was moving, and would be potentially put people in danger, because the water would change color. So we could see it forming, we could see it moving, and see where the danger zones would come, because as it was sucking the water out, it was churning the sand, and the sand would turn the water brown. Yeah. And that's how we could tell. Yeah. And on this particular, this first summer I worked there, lifeguards, I learned the lifeguard communication skills. So it was 3 whistles, basically, was the way we operated. A first whistle like this just was trying to get another lifeguard's attention.
Right.
Or sometimes getting a person's attention as well, a long single whistle. 2 whistles like this, like 2 quick, sharp toots, meant that there's a rescue in progress. So lifeguards out of the stand, in the water, making a rescue, and we're all on alert for that. And then the thing that we were trained to hear but never did hear was this 3 whistles. And that meant somebody was actually submerged and was missing, and we had to go find them. So this first summer that I'm there, shocking as it was, we heard these 3 whistles. We're like, what? All of us ran down to the what we called the main stand, where the captain and other officers were there to direct us. And they said, yeah, there's a submersion and we need to get in the water. All of us, we closed the beach and did a search and rescue for more than an hour. And ultimately, whistles alerted us again that we were to stop and come out of the water, because we hadn't found this guy. It was, really devastating thing. We were exhausted, but we were well, prepared to continue to look for him. But they called it off and turned it into a search and recovery for the Coast Guard. And his family was there. He's a guy in his 20s. His parents were probably in their 40s. And it was just the most devastating thing to see. And this is the story that I typically start to tell when I'm speaking to a corporate audience, which is a good deal of the time these days, or delivering workshops on resilience. I start with something like this because it's the first experience that I had with a devastating, like an unexpected event that was just tremendously, I mean, it just hurt us in the heart. I don't even know how to say it. I've never seen grief up close like that. Wailing, crying, things like that, and completely unexpected. We had to get back up in the lifeguard stand after that had happened. We did our search. We had to reopen the beach for like another, for this mass of humanity that was there, and continue to actually do our job for that day, rest of that day. We had to be resilient, is what I say now. I wouldn't have used those words then. And then we had to actually learn how to be resilient for the rest of that summer. And we did some things. We made some changes that ultimately resulted in that event never recurring. Like 7 additional summers that I worked at that beach, despite the odds that were clearly against us, 20 lifeguards on 100,000 people, we never lost anybody again. Nobody ever went down in our water again. And in part, the things that I learned that summer on the beach are the things that ultimately sparked my curiosity later in life after going through several different career pivots. I wrote a book called Pivot some years ago about career reinvention, and going from being a school teacher to a lawyer to ultimately running a training company and speaking and writing books and things of that sort. I started to really get curious about what I had learned about resilience that summer at the beach, and what changed for us over the course of those 7 additional years, and started doing research. In fact, this book, as you mentioned in the intro, Change Proof, has just gone out. Change Proof, leveraging the power of uncertainty to build long-term resilience, is based on the research of 3,000 leaders from all over the globe, from industries, every industry you could think of, Fortune 550 companies to startups and everything in between, as well as my own experiences in having been a serial entrepreneur, a pivoter, co-founder, CEO, all that kind of stuff, and matching that up with what we learned from our assessment of these 3,000 leaders. And that's, it's just interesting that all that sort of research has its seeds in that thing moment that happened when I was 19.
Yeah. No, I like what you're doing, because I've read Good to Great, Jim Collins, and the research. I mean, it's all based on research. It's research on so many different companies and blah, 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 blah. So I love what you're doing. And then there's something that you said in your TED Talk, because you've done a TED Talk, a few TED Talks. You said that you can't fight the currents because you get worn out. And I loved that. And that's a really good, metaphor for life. Really. I mean, I just got back from Peru. I was in Peru with my wife for 3 weeks, with a really good, he's a curandero, wisdom keeper from the Andes, for 3 weeks. And we went to these many sites, older than Egypt. We're talking 5,500 years ago, like mind boggling that we don't even know about here. It's technically, it's in the Americas and we don't even know about it. We know more about Egypt and Rome than we know about it. It's incredible. But he also said, so Jamie Alvarez, he said exactly the same thing. He said that, if you fall in a river, don't fight to swim back upstream or whatever. If you let the river take you and go with the river, eventually you'll come to the side, you'll be able to get out. But if you fight, you'll wear yourself out, and chances are you're probably going to drown. And he equated that to life. It's like what you're saying, I think too, in your resilience book, is that, if we fight, if we're constantly fighting, just letting yourself go and kind of go with the flow, things, tend to work out for us. And it's the same thing, which was really, must have been really, really tough for you on that beach that day. And I don't know what happened to that young man. It's a human tendency, I think, is when we get in a situation like that, we panic and we fight. And but if we kind of relax and let ourselves go a little bit, we're able to think. And I mean, it's an old surfing thing too. If you're a surfer, it's just like, battling the rip currents. I mean, basically at the end of the day, you end up floating out around it and you can come back in and you're totally fine. But we're just wired to fight, right?
We're in part, and I think this is fairly groundbreaking research, and we can get into the what makes it, you know, unique or different. But I think you really put your finger right on it, Nigel. Our instant or even intuitive response often is to fight change.
Yes.
So we use in the book Change Proof the story of this loss and the rip current that caused it, or the response to the rip current that caused it, as a way to open this discussion about how we deal with change. And often it's to fight it. And I mean, you couldn't get it any clearer than that. When you fight that
this is another I got another little interesting anecdote here, is that during COVID, I was having a bit of anxiety issues and whatnot, and Devin, my son, co-host here, he was getting into meditation and breathing, and then Wim Hof, the Iceman, and doing all this type of stuff. And so he brought me down. I came down from Whistler, and he kind of laid me down on the floor and said, "Dad, let's do an exercise on breathing." So I was doing this Wim Hof breathing. And then we slowly started working our way into going to the cold water plunges, and we'd break ice at Needle Lake at Whistler, and we'd go in up there. But I started doing this, and it was really incredible. It was an incredible exercise for me. But at first, when I'd step in, it was that fight or flight. It's like, it's freaking cold water and I'm jumping out. There's no way I can do this. There's absolutely no way I can do that. And then after time, what I realized is to relax. You go into this. I mean, talking ice water. There's ice chunks floating in the water. You go in and you breathe. You focus on your breathing, your meditative breathing, and you relax. You're completely, totally fine. Your body switches from the fight or flight to this relaxation mode, and don't stay in too long because you get hypothermic after time, but you can stay in for 2-3 minutes. You'll be totally fine. And I just found the same thing. So when my buddies started doing it, my buddy at Whistler, and then my other buddies down here, we'd start going into this ice water. Same thing would happen. I would be sitting in there meditating in this water. I've been in for about a minute. My buddy would come in, and he would get up to his calves, and he would start screaming and jump out. And then after time, it's like, just relax, just go with it. Don't fight it. Don't fight, relax. So we started doing the thing at Whistler, and he's doing it more than I do now. It's just that really, it's our mind. It's all in our mind. And you also say that, resilience, it's not about endurance. It's also about recovery. Right. So
let me
so I rambled on about that there.
No, I'm going to point to this one thing, which you've opened up this great can here for us to talk about. When it comes to resilience, it for so many people, it does represent a capacity to sort of endure, and endurance being the way most people actually define resilience.
Right.
And our research is that it's not that at all. And that's why people are at the moment, I think, as exhausted as they are and feeling the level of anxiety that they are feeling, because there's seemingly no end to not just to the quote, pandemic or the disruption, but to the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And the fact that to hang in there and hang in there and hang in there, it's fine after, 3 months, you go, oh, this thing will be over, and I can hang in there for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, but 2+ years into it. And there's still so much that is uncertain, and so much that has changed, and so much that is rapidly changing. So that rip current, that riptide has not really let up. And for people that are of the endurance mindset, like, I can just take anything. I'm like Rocky, take a punch and get back up, take a punch, get back up. Even for those folks, they're near burned out, because you cannot approach this kind of thing with a plan, a strategy to just endure it. You can't run a marathon forever. Even those guys who run, can run
100 milers. Yeah.
100 milers. Right.
Yeah.
They just can't run forever. Nobody can. Mm-hmm. So resilience is not that. And if you say, well, what is it? If that's not that, then what is it? And the secret to it was revealed to me at the beach, and in what we did afterward. And what we did to kind of give you a taste of what's in the book and what we learned is we started to toggle. And that's not a term that we used back then. It's a term I apply to it now. But we use this toggle principle to be able to refresh ourselves and reset ourselves. Not only that day was a difficult one, but every day after that, we had to be that much better at doing what we were doing. And that was despite the fact that everything was changing constantly. We were constantly in the water making rescues, not, every moment, but lots of times. Sometimes we'd make 100 rescues in a day. That's a lot for 20 guards. So we needed to have a way to restore ourselves on a regular basis. So what we did was we started working an hour in the lifeguard stand, maybe one of us or two of us in a stand, and then an hour off. So it was an hour on and an hour off, like a light switch, toggling back and forth between on and off, between our energy, the energy that we needed to produce, the focus we needed to have, which was pretty intense at times, and then complete unplug and downtime. And that meant that when you were down, meaning you were out of the stand, you could read, you could nap, you could eat your lunch, you could work out, as some of us did. We'd go to lift weights or run or swim and things like that. Just depended. And for the most part, that's the way we operated all the time. Now, on days when the surf was really big and we were making rescues kind of all day long, then your downtime was spent behind that lifeguard stand. So you were there with your umbrella and you could take a nap. But as soon as you heard those whistles, and if you knew that the two lifeguards that were up in the stand were both now out of the stand in the water, then you would get up and pop yourself up into the stand so that there was somebody that had eyes on that little area.
Right.
But that toggling back and forth really has become the premise for how we see, and what we've studied is confirmed it, that resilience is about how we recover, not about how we endure. It's about literally our capacity to bounce forward, not to bounce back. And that, I think, is I don't want to say revolutionary, but it's not the way people talk about it. It's generally not the way it is referenced or taught. I've done a lot of not just research of the 3,000 plus folks that we've studied, but of the articles and other research that's been written. It's very rare that that's discussed. And when we're talking about creating these, the recovery, we're talking about ritualizing it in 4 specific areas: mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And those people, doesn't matter whether people in business or not, but business leaders today are entrepreneurs really burning the candle at all ends. It's really important to craft and create these kind of rituals, so that we can be more resilient.
I totally agree with you, and I know that because I belong to this conclave at MIT in Boston, and it was born out of the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I never forget. I think it was like one of the first. I've been going for 17 years. And I think one of the very first times that Vern Harnish, who was one of the founders of the Entrepreneurs Organization, he stood in front of us and he said, how many of you guys out there, have owned your businesses for more than 5 or 6 or 7 years? And I put my hand up and everybody put their hand up. And he goes, how much time have you taken off since you started your business? Everybody's, oh, I've got no time, and et cetera. He says, I got to tell you, if you've had or owned your business, and you're an entrepreneur, and you've been, nose to the grindstone for, 3, 4, 5, whatever years, you need to take like 1, 2, 3 months off completely away from your business. And everybody's shaking their head going, no, that's not possible. But I had found that when I started my business in 1992, I started with my sister, and we were both into kind of mountaineering and rock climbing and all this stuff. We would like toggle, like she would take a month and she would head off to Yosemite and go climbing, and then I'd take off with my wife and we'd go to Nepal and all this stuff. And in that period of time, it was really tough to say, I can't leave the business, I can't leave. But when you leave, you realize that you can leave. And number 2 is when you leave and you're completely fresh, your brain is away from the business, and that's when all the good stuff gets created. That's when all the juice and all the problems get solved. So you head out for a week, 2 weeks, a month, you come back completely refreshed. Like you said, you've recharged, because you're in that, we all think that I'm so resilient. I can do this. I can do this. I'm young, and I'm, the years go by pretty darn quick. Next thing you know, you start your business when you're 25. Next thing you know, you're 45 in 2 minutes, it seems like, and you're still burning yourself at both, like the candle at both ends. So I think exactly what you're saying is to take that, take that time and to recharge. We have to, but it's so hard to do.
The grinding it, is a thing that people almost take pride in, that they can grind it out, but grinding it.
Oh yeah. It's a badge of
often,
honor. It's a badge of honor for us. It's
it does.
ridiculous.
And so it does perpetuate exhaustion. And even this concept of grit and how people talk about grit as something that we ought to be aspiring to, I think it's quite dangerous. But what you said, I think, is also something I have to address, because a lot of people, when they hear that first part of this message about we've got to, think about this toggle principle back and forth between our energy zone and our recovery zone, they think, yeah, it's got to be a week away. Vern Harnish, I think he started YPO as well, or is involved in that. Really intelligent guy. And yeah, for people to say, I'm going to take 3 months off, I'm going to go on sabbatical. Hey, great. More power to you. And I know a lot of people listening to this go, well, that's great for somebody else. That's just not my life.
Exactly.
For those people who are either in a job and they don't have the prospect of 3 months off, or they're an entrepreneur and they're in charge of producing the money day in and day out, paying the bills day in and day out, there's no 3 month sabbatical happening. And what I'm saying is, you don't have to. What toggling is how it is that you are routinely and even ritually giving your mind and your body and your spirit even moments to rest and recover, so that those, and I'd use a different analogy for this one, because even with the lifeguard one, we were in the stand an hour and then, out of the stand to relax or, recover for an hour, and then back in the stand for an hour. And that's the way the day went, up, down, like that. But the Formula One, my son and I love watching the Netflix thing. I don't know if you and your boy ever watch that together. The 3 seasons of watching these guys. And it's so intense, right? There's so much on the line. There's so much speed. There's so much money. The whole thing is just amped up. And it's I think it's pretty fun to see, so much of it. But what really struck me was how these cars are required to take pit stops. In fact, they're penalized at the end of the race if they don't take pit stops, because if they don't pit, they are not just dangerous to themselves, but they're dangerous to everyone else on the track. And an accident in Formula One racing can lead to death quite easily. And it's certainly, millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment.
It's all about those tires. It's crazy. I watch, profusely. We watch it. My wife and I watch the actual circuit. We tape the actual races now, because the seasons are
right. And isn't it curious that even if you're in the front, like you're leading the race, with just a couple of laps, and these races are 72, 73 laps, they're not like, marathons or anything.
You're talking about Lewis Hamilton in the last race of the year. I know, it's like, oh my gosh, like.
But if you're in front and you're riding on worn tires, bald tires even, and somebody else's pit, and has fresh tires, there's a good chance you're going to lose the race, even if you're a second or two ahead, because that person's able to brake and accelerate in ways that you can't when you're on those bald tires. So to me, the example there, when we look at what toggling can look like in Formula One racing, we're talking about, they get in the pit. What are they in there? 2-3 seconds.
Yeah.
They get 4 new tires and a fresh tank of gas, all in 2-3 seconds, because they understand the time is crucial. So for an entrepreneur, a business owner, somebody who's working in someone else's business, time is crucial. Nobody really wants to have to take an extended period off. And I think that the lesson there is that it's far easier to prevent fatigue in the first place than to recover from it later. If you're at the point where you're exhausted or near burned out, then what Vern is saying, you may need to take 3 months off, because 3 months off is better than a nervous breakdown. Like I ended up in the hospital at a certain point. You mentioned anxiety. I ended up thinking I was having a heart attack on a particular Saturday. And I was supposed to be at my son's baseball game. It turned out to be a panic attack. So I had let it go so far that at a certain point, that's the way my body responded to it. Right. So, really taking a more proactive approach to how it is that you're handling stress and how you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually resolve changes that are occurring all the time. I think that's the bigger question here. And what I love is that we are able to assess that in about I mean, not, I don't want to give the wrong impression, but in 3 minutes, and it's a short amount of time, in 16 questions, which is this assessment that we've supplied to organizations globally. And I'm happy to give it to your folks as well. It's free. And what's wonderful is it creates a baseline for where it is in those 4 zones. You are either hitting the mark or missing the mark. So mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, how resilient are you is the question. And what's amazing is that 16 questions takes 3 minutes to answer. You get scores in all 4 areas, as well as what's the delta on what's missing. And it's interesting too, because across the globe, with, again, thousands of people having done this, the average score, the median score is 64 out of 100. You think about it, 64 out of 100. So just that alone, if you imagine that you get up and run a business and everybody in your business is operating at 64% of capacity, how much productivity, how much innovation, how much money is left on the table when that's the delta.
Exactly. Wow. So just you don't have to share all 16 or whatnot, but so what are some of the self-care rituals that we can kind of throw out there? Some of the, I mean, I just go back, because so you talked about you had panic attacks. I was having panic attacks, anxiety. My whole left side of my body was going numb, crazy stuff. And so I got into this ritual with Devin, my son. He got me doing the breathing every morning and meditation and all this stuff. And then I also do the ice bath, and it completely changed my life. And this all happened during COVID. But all the years before that, I was having these crazy panic attacks, and I didn't know what the heck it was. So what are some of the little? So
is that those things have helped? You said it to transform your life. So clearly, these changes that you made really helped. So we break them down into those 4 areas, and it can be everything. So like after my TED Talk was published, I was contacted by the CEO of a hospital in the southeastern part of the United States. And she said, I just had a same event. She said, you talked about how you had this panic attack that you thought was a heart attack. She says, that just happened to me last week. And we had ended up getting on the phone, having a conversation. And I said to her, so have you told anybody about it? And she said, no, are you kidding me? Who am I going to tell? Like my leadership team, like they'll all, like, I have to be the strong one for them. I can't be the one that they have to take care of. Right. And I said, well, you and I have a lot in common, because when this happened to me, I was still a lawyer, and I thought the same way. There's no way in the world that, who am I going to tell? My adversaries, the judges, my partners, like, it's not happening. I got to be a warrior, for crying out loud. But what I didn't know that I do know now is that it's absolutely essential that you are transparent with the people around you about this kind of thing. Ultimately, that ability to let them in and let them support you or just let them into what's real for you will only create greater trust. And they know something's up. They probably looking at you and thinking, man, she's about to hit the wall. She's about to hit the wall, But so she ultimately, it took a little doing, but she said yes and did, in fact, share it with her team, and was profoundly impacted by their response to her. And to this day, that was probably a catalytic event for her as a leader. But then from there, what we did was we said, we've got to create a recovery map now in those 4 areas. So I'll just give you an example of what her recovery map looked like.
Yeah.
So in the mental side, I said, well, how are you starting your day? To me, owning the day is literally the first 10 to 30 minutes of the day. If you don't own that, the rest of the day is like you're on a wild Bronco, and good luck at staying on for more than 8 seconds. So I said, what are you doing with your phone right out of the gate? She says, well, I pick it up like we all do. And she said, like we all do. And I check my messages and make sure, the queen hasn't called, and, nobody died and all that kind of stuff. And she checks her email. I go, so that's the first thing you do right out of the gate. Your feet hit the floor and you touch your phone, right? She says, yep, that's what I do. I said, good. So we're going to make a small change. 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes of the day, you're not allowed to touch your phone. In fact, what I'd really love is if you can just be still, whether it's in bed, with your feet on the floor, sitting on your bed, or sitting somewhere else, get in the lotus position, whatever you got to do, want to do. But 10 minutes of just being still. call it meditation if you want. Not everybody's a good meditator. I'm a crappy meditator, frankly. At least that's been the history for me. Call it prayer. I love to pray, sit in gratitude, whatever you want to call it, but 10 minutes of stillness. She said, all right, I'm going to do this. I can do this. Small change, which is something we may not even get into today, but these don't have to be big things. They're not intended to be, and they're less effective, in fact, when they're big changes. Right. So that's the first thing. Emotionally, I said to her, well, what are you doing that's causing you some upset, or where do you feel upset during the day? She says, well, man, I just watch the news and everything that's going on in the world. How could it be anything but upsetting? Are you kidding me? I say, okay, when are you watching the news? Like you're a hospital CEO. She goes, well, usually at night, right before I go to sleep. I'm like, oh my God. All right. So you're making this too easy for me. How about what's something that you want to do that you haven't been doing? She says, I'm not reading enough. I know I got to be reading more. I want to be reading more. I said, so how about instead of watching 20 minutes of news before bed, you read for 20 to 30 minutes before bed? He said, okay, I can do that too. So that's the emotional piece. Physically, she's sitting in her desk, like so many of us, in front of that computer, sitting in that uncomfortable chair, just not moving her body in the middle of the day. A lot of people may have some exercise at the beginning. They might have some at the end, but usually in the middle, 4 or 5 hours of not moving very much. That was a key area. Said, how about 20 to 25 minutes of walking around lunchtime, before or after? She said, yes, I will commit to doing that. Even though I haven't been, I will do it. The research on walking is ridiculous. It's probably the best possible thing you could do for yourself.
Absolutely.
Especially to bring yourself back to a peace, to peacefulness, to equilibrium, homeostasis, lots of words you could use for it. But it reduces hypertension. It reduces heart rate. It's just really good for you. Yeah. So she said, yes, I will do that. That was the physical piece. And then spiritual, on that side, she just said, I would love to do something, that to honor my grandmother. I feel like I miss her, and I think about her, but that's about it. She pops into my head here and there. I said, well, what's something that you used to do with your grandmother? She said, well, she taught me how to knit long ago. And I said, you knit? She goes, no, not forever. I'll pick up knitting again. And that'll be something that I can do that was, it's going to make me feel connection to my grandmother. Yeah. And maybe I'll get a good sweater out of it or whatever. So she started that. And that was her initial recovery map, Nigel. Those 4 small changes, 10 minutes of stillness in the morning, not watching TV before bed, but instead reading, walking for 20 to 25 minutes midday, and picked up this knitting hobby to just honor her grandmother's memory. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about here, man. You toggle absolutely back and forth between these areas of work and intense focus on one thing, and then switching that focus, or resting and having focusing on nothing. Go back and forth, toggling back and forth, using a recovery map, or creating a recovery map for yourself. And you're going to, you're going to like take your foot off the accelerator enough, that you can feel the stress abate, and the intensity that produces, that ultimately feels like anxiety. Yeah. That will also lessen. Yeah.
I love what you're saying here with like the little bits, right? The little bit. Everything starts in little bits. And I know when I was dealing with these anxiety attacks, it was horrible. And I, like you said, tell people, I wasn't telling anybody. We had a fairly major lawsuit against us in our company, and it would have wiped out our whole company. It went on for 10 years, but 4 years very, very heavily. And I got to the point where I was having these anxiety attacks. I was in meetings with our team, and I basically, an anxiety attack is like everything goes zoop, and you're in a tunnel. You hear it echoing in your head, and you can't think, and you're dizzy. And I got in the car and I drove home, and I could not find my wife. I thought maybe she could help me. She wasn't home. And I got on the phone. I started calling people like, I need help. I need to go to the hospital. It was so freaking bad. And then, she took me and she just held my hands. I did a little bit of breathing exercises, and it really kind of slowed it calmed me down. And then Devin was working with me with all this other, but I found like exactly what you said. It's all these little tiny things. And so I took a little bit of meditation in the morning, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a little bit of, like you said, prayer for gratefulness, and then some stretching, and then slowly getting into the breathing. And then, so, I mean, I've built it up over about 2 years now, where it can take me up to about an hour and a half to to go through, but I built it up. I started off with maybe 15 minutes, and now I built it up because I get so into it, and I feel like a million
Yeah.
bucks, and I can take on the world, and it totally zones. And there's something that I learned when I was also in Peru with our friend, is that even when you're meditating, it's hard not to think about what I have to do next, what I have to do. Or when you're exercising, you're trying to get through this one set so you get to the next one. It's be in the now. Like, what are we doing right now? What are we doing right now? Stay in the now. Fear is created by, and anxiety is by thinking about the future, what's going to happen in the future, right? So if you can bring it back to the now, what's happening now, it really changes everything, and it changes everything for me. It's and I really liked what you said about connecting with her grandmother. Another exercise that we did in meditation and into Peru was connecting with our ancestors. And I had a really beautiful, like, this is 2 weeks ago, I had a beautiful connection with my grandmother, who I loved dearly. She passed away a long time ago, and it was like I was having a conversation with her, and she was laughing and I was laughing, and it was like, are you there? Are you not? Like, it was a connection with our ancestors that I'd never done anything like that before. And it was really, really just a beautiful process. Anyway, that was my experience. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Thank you for sharing that.
Man. Yeah. Boy, where can we, I mean, I know, wow, we're really running on here. I know, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Devin always loves to ask a question that revolves around. So Adam, if you had any advice for your 25-year-old self, like one tip or two tips, something you've learned in your life, and you could tell it to your 25-year-old or 18-year-old self, what would that be?
Yeah, I love that question, and I know we're wrapping up here, but the way I see that question today is a little different than the way I used to hear it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is how would I learn? Can we learn from the future? Because so much of what we're thinking about these days is as you said, about what's going to happen in the future. And so if we could learn from the future, like if my 18 or 25-year-old self could learn from the future, what would I have been able to learn? And my answer is that everything that's happening in the present is net positive. And that's not because I'm a half full Pollyanna, positivity guy. It's just that my presence here now, looking back at anything I was worrying about, obsessing about, giving myself ulcers over 10 years ago, 20 years ago, all turned out just right. And I mean, not perfectly, some things yes, some things no, but perfect, but right in the sense that it led to growth for me and growth for other people that I was around. And so that's net positive. It's net growth. It's just, that's what the future will teach us all the time.
Yeah.
And yet we imagine, that the scenarios of any number of what ifs that will, turn into net negative. So I wasted, or let's say, I think a lot of us waste a tremendous amount of energy in that state of worry. Worry takes a great deal of energy to keep up, to babysit, to entertain. Worry thoughts take a lot of our energy. So if you think about, again, back to these things of how a car in a Formula One race could win, they've got to go fast, of course, but they have to have this ability to finish the race. They need sustainability. They've got to, it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. But ultimately it's longevity that produces, consistently will produce the win. There's so many times those cars, they crash, their motor falls out, the wheel falls off. I mean, so just being able to be in the race long enough you will outlast so many other cars, other people, other competitors, if you want to look at it that way, that will crash and burn, sabotage themselves or whatever it would be. And to be in the race for the long haul, you've got to take great care of yourself. Yes. And you have to wisely use your energy and produce more energy as well. And you are greatly disadvantaged when you have wanting, on the one hand, producing energy and expending energy toward the thing you want, but On the other hand, you're leaking energy in the form of unnecessary worry and doubt and fear. And that's the thing that I would tell my 25-year-old self, because with energy, inspired energy, you can do anything. There's literally nothing you cannot do if you've got enough energy to pursue those things, passionately and with love and whatnot. So right now, I think, for most people, their exhaustion is the result of having leaked energy. Their anxiety, same thing. You could all just kind of go back to the fact that we are depleted, and when we're depleted, things just start falling off the cliff. So the answer is, do your best to understand that self-care is not selfish. It's the most important thing you can do, and routinely be refilling the tank using these rituals that we talk about in this book, Change Proof, so that you're producing resilience, because you're ritualizing the recovery aspect that so many people ignore or unaware of or think is selfish somehow. And so you got to give yourself permission, give people around you that you're leading by your own example permission to do this, because then you have the capacity to go the distance. You're not going to end up, in a ditch on the side of the road, all broke down the way so many have and will, because they see that, they think of resilience as endurance, and it's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
No.
I know. And you just twigged my memory on something here, that when you said, talking to yourself, that when you were 25 or 18 or whatever it was, there was another exercise. I'm talking about Jamie again here, that we did, because we leave a lot of stuff in the past, a lot of stuff that is unfinished. And there was a simple exercise that we did. And it's like a meditation where you kind of sit there quietly, and then you visit yourself when you're 25, or whenever you're having this issue, whenever you had this trauma, and you basically look at yourself and go, hey, look, I'm 60 years old now. I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. Don't worry about that thing, whatever it was. I'm fine. And basically, you clear out all the crap, and you basically call yourself back to where you are now, and you're fine. And then it works mentally, and you just kind of work through this process of clearing out all this garbage and things that are giving you the anxiety from the past. And you just visit yourself and go, hey, look at me, I'm good, everything worked out. And so I've been working on that. There's a whole bunch of stuff I've been working on, but it's really helped. And all the information that you've shared in your book, I think we're living in an interesting time again. I mean, COVID, and there's a lot of crazy stuff going on globally now. And there's a lot of stress, and but something, like what you've shared is, there's a lot of simple little things we can all do, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, an hour and a half, whatever it is, whatever you want to build up to, that really, really, really helps. And both of us, you and me both, have had personal experiences with this and using these techniques, and it's really helped. It's really helped me so much. So, and I'm doing so much better. Fantastic. And yeah, like you said, I love my life. That's what you like to say. And I do, I really do. I love my life, and we're so grateful, so fortunate. It could have easily gone the other way so many times, but
Indeed.
Using these techniques and having support of a lot of amazing people, very, very fortunate. And so thank you. And what I want you to do is hold up that book one more time, Adam.
Okay.
Because I've got it up on the, actually, you got to talk to make the, say something so then your screen comes on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Oh, right. There you go. For those that are watching this on YouTube or wherever. Yeah, exactly.
There we
go.
Change
Proof. And you get to changeproof.com. It's the simplest way to get the book, is at changeproof.com. You can buy it anywhere you want. But if you go to changeproof.com, you're going to get access to these wonderful add-ons, bonuses, we call them, right? But some really, really unique, I think, different ones. We created a walk with Adam, which is, sort of a take on an Audible, but and I love listening to books as well as just reading them. And so this is a bit different. You're actually going to go on a walk with me. We're going to go on a walk together. And
I love it.
So it's fun stuff. And there's a discussion guide that goes along with the book, so you can use the book as a teaching tool for the people in your organization, people that you lead, with great with teams, etc. So that's also there. And I invite people to take the resilience assessment. It's in the book, of course. It's on my adammarkel.com website, but you can just go to resiliencerank.com. And 3 minutes, this assessment will give you a baseline answer about how resilient you are in those 4 different zones and what to do about it. Most importantly, how do we bridge the gap once we know where we're falling off? As I said, the 64 is a global average. Organizations of every size, shape,
wow.
And so there's a lot of capacity that's being left on the table that we think we can recapture, which is kind of fun. So it's just been a blast to be on your show today, Nigel. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate reconnecting with you. This has been fun. We could talk forever. We could have like a 5-hour thing here and never get bored. I tell you that much. So we're going to post all of the links and everything on here, and then it's going to be on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and also all the other audio channels as well for our audience. And next time we'll have Devin on here when he's feeling better. So it's a bummer because
when the supply chain didn't get in the way.
When the supply chain didn't get in the way, yeah. Whatever his supply chain is, I never know.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you so much, and and good luck with the book. And we'll post everything regarding the book as well. So thank you so much, and thanks to Randy as well for setting all this up. Really appreciate you guys.
So super. Thank you, Nigel.